Okay, I'm unmuting Tom, but he's not being unmuted. Does anybody know why, Rian?
Well, I think he has to unmute himself also.
Yeah,
Hey,
there you go.
so Patty,
Okay.
are we up on the internet? Are we on YouTube or
We are.
Facebook Live or whatever it might be?
We're actually live on YouTube, and the link was put on the city's Facebook page and also on the website. So we're good to go.
Awesome. Okay. And it looks like we got everybody here. So I mean, it's 5:59. I don't know. Does anybody object to starting a minute early?
No.
Okay. All right. So look, first thing on our agenda is to approve the minutes of the meeting that we had on March 10th. Is there a motion from anybody to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Okay. Anybody second that?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Well, I have an edit I'd like to suggest.
Yeah, of course. Rian, what is that edit?
So towards the bottom, the Article 2, Section 1, Item G, I'd just like it clarified that we voted to send that to Subcommittee C.
Would anybody, do you need any comment on that? Does anybody want to comment on
Could
that?
that be repeated, please?
Article 2, the Section 1, Item G, about people who've committed crimes. We voted to send that to Subcommittee C, so they could research how other towns handled that issue.
Any discussion further on that amendment?
I just have one edit as well, and that would be, I think we talked about a couple times the way the minutes would be written up in terms of motion and the votes on that motion. We would obviously say the motion passed, 7-3 or whatever it might be, and then we would list the dissenters. So I think as long as we just fix that, that would be perfect.
Any other thoughts on the minutes from March 10th?
I have an edit too, for Article 1, Section 2, so on the last page of the minutes. I just wanted to change the wording. It says the motion is made to climate the mayor position, and I think it's eliminate, so just to fix that wording twice in that first paragraph on the last page.
Okay. And anything else? Okay. So is there a motion to approve the minutes subject to the amendments suggested by Rian, Ludi, and James?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Okay,
Second.
so now, because we're not in the room and we can't all just raise our hands like we would, I'm going to just call down the list to see how everybody votes on that. All right, does that make sense to everybody today?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So, Phil, how do you vote on that?
Yes.
Okay. Ludi, how do you vote on that?
Yes.
Samantha,
Yes.
Rian,
Yes.
Hillary,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
I also vote yes. Julian,
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay, now, and just so everybody knows, I'm not picking on anybody. It's not that Phil's my favorite person. It's just that's the alphabetical order by last name, Phil to Kathy. So that's how we're gonna do it. Okay.
I thought I was.
All right. I'm sorry, guys. That's my 9-month-old son. He's just waking up from a nap. He's a little rowdy right now. All right, so we're through number 1 on the agenda. Number 2. Moving to approval of the charter amendments. I guess this is our second vote, with the exception of RN 43. Is there any discussion that anyone would like to have about that, about those amendments?
Tom,
No.
I do.
Yep.
I do.
Okay.
Regarding Article 5, Section 2, regarding the public health officer, if you remember, the question was asked, who is the current one?
Yes, that's right.
No one had that answer. So I did some research, and the city manager verified that we did not have a physician, and he thought he would give it to the code officer. Well, when I looked up the state statute about qualifications, the qualifications state the local health officer must be qualified by education, training, or experience in the field of public health, or a combination as determined by the standard adopted by the department rule, no later than June 1st, 2008.
And Kathy, are you suggesting that our code enforcement officer does not have the training or the education to meet those requirements?
That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay. Any further comment on this this issue, or the issues of the amendments?
So I guess my suggestion is we should not be voting on that Section 2 to pass it until we can have further documentation and instructions.
Phil, any further comment on this issue?
What would be the implication of us voting?
Well, and that's kind of, that is, I feel, my question about this situation is, does our voting on this have any impact on who the officer is? And more importantly, is it even under our purview to determine who the officer is?
I don't think
Is there, I mean, I'm just
Can
curious.
I answer that one, Tom?
Please. That's not a rhetorical question. I really do want to know.
Okay, so the answer is no on both counts.
Okay.
So first of all, right now, the city manager can go ahead and say, I'd like it to be the code enforcement officer. It is still in the state statute that it does have to be approved by the city council. So any qualifications can come up in front of city council. And second of all, what we do tonight, this is going to go to the voters in November, and no changes are going to go into effect until the earliest is going to be June 1st of 2021. And so the amendment that we do have does actually just change it to say pursuant to qualifications contained in relevant state statutes, instead of specifically calling out that it needs to be a doctor, just in case the state does change any requirements, or in case they do feel that there is some relevant experience with someone who is not a licensed doctor.
And so my point on this, Kathy, and Rian, thank you very much for that clarification, is that if you have some concerns over whether or not the code enforcement officer fits the bill here, and I would also say that I think that those concerns are legitimate, based upon what is being outlined for the proper qualifications.
Yeah.
I'm not going to disagree with you, and I don't necessarily know that anybody else on this committee disagrees with you either. It's just that I don't necessarily know that our voting on this is going to impact that either way. I think that irrespective of what we do, ultimately that decision is going to lie with the city council. How does everybody else feel about that?
Agree.
Okay,
Well,
Moody, your thoughts?
I agree with that. I think the language makes sense as it is, since we really don't have that power, as we keep saying, and it makes sense to follow the state statute, and that's what the language says. But I'm open to just continue listening to the rest of the discussion.
Samantha.
I agree with what you just said, Tom. I think that the way that we have it written makes sense, and allows the council to make that determination, and it makes sense. It refers to the city, to the state statute already. So,
Rian, I think you spoke eloquently about this, but any further comment on it?
No, except to, well, no, I'm just going to leave it at no.
All right. Hillary, your thoughts?
I agree. I think the language is clear and we have to follow state statute. And I think everybody else has already commented, and I agree with everything that's been said.
James.
I agree with you, Tom. Thank you.
Ron.
I agree. We will go with what the state statute now states.
Julian.
Yeah, I agree. On a separate level that's not really charter related, it is kind of concerning in the middle of a pandemic that we don't have a doctor in the city. Maybe it's something we can raise with the city manager, but he might be qualified. If you're having a code, he'll know what to do.
And Kathy.
I still have the concern, but we'll just leave it as it is.
Is there a motion to approve those amendments under number 2, under section 2 or number 2 on our agenda for this evening?
Does that mean we're voting as a block for everything we voted on, doing it this way?
No, yeah, I was going to say, Tom, these have to be amendment by amendment votes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you're doing a block vote rather than addressing, like Rian said, amendment by amendment.
All right. So how do we want to go about that then? How do we want to just start with the very first amendment that we've made?
I think going down the list in order of the meeting and calling re-votes on each one.
Or, Tom, do you have the document that I sent, I think, on Friday that lists the first votes? We're only voting on 3 tonight.
I'd be happy to read those for the record if you'd like, if it would be helpful.
Daddy, I think it would be.
Okay, so Amendment RN01 is Amendment RN07, Article 2, Section 1 shall be further amended as follows. The mayor shall be an inhabitant of the city and a registered voter therein, and shall, at the time of the election, be 18 years of age or older, and shall, at the time of and for, strike out 3 months and add 1 year previous to the election, have been a resident of the city.
All right. Is there a motion to approve that amendment?
So moved.
Second. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. All right. So let's do this. Let's just go. I'm going to just call roll again. Phil, I know you moved for this, but how do you vote on this?
Yes.
Ludi.
Yes.
Samantha.
yes.
Rian.
Yes.
Hillary.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
I also vote yes. Julian.
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Great. All right. Excellent work. It's 6:12 and we're already moving here. This is fantastic. Patty, would you mind reading the second one in for us, please?
Amendment RN24, Article 5, Section 1 shall be amended as follows. The administration of the city shall be distributed among the following departments: finance, records, and the addition here is parks and recreation, personnel, public works, public health and welfare, police, fire, assessment, city clerk, or other such departments as may be established by ordinance of the city council.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve that amendment?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Wonderful. Phil, how do you vote on this?
Yes.
Ludi,
Yes.
Samantha,
Yes.
Rian,
Yes.
Hillary,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
I also vote yes. Julian,
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Excellent. All right, Patty, our third amendment. What can you read that in for us?
There you go.
Oh,
Article
I
5,
got
Section
all over the
2.
place on my computer screen. Great.
Shall be amended as follows. This is RN 27. Each department director shall possess the necessary qualifications to ensure efficient administration of such department. The director of public works shall be or shall appoint to the department a registered civil engineer to serve as the city engineer. The director of public health and welfare shall be or shall, and the addition is, upon approval of the city council, appointment to the department, and the addition is a health officer pursuant to qualifications contained in relevant state statutes, 22 MRSA 451 as amended. And the struck out language is a doctor of medicine or osteopathy licensed to practice in the state of Maine. And then continuing to serve as health officer, the health officer, this is an addition, the health officer will serve for a period of time pursuant to relevant state statute. And then the city council may, by ordinance, establish further minimum qualifications for department directors.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Rian and Patty, for that. Is there a motion to approve that amendment as written?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Bill, how do you vote on this?
Yes.
Ludi,
Yes.
Samantha,
Yes.
Rian,
Yes.
Hillary,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
I also vote yes. Julian,
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So in light of that, it appears that we now get down to consideration of motions for charter revisions, and under heading number 4 of our agenda. And I believe that we had gotten through and addressed motions on Article 1, and I know we had addressed motions under Article 2, the mayor. So I believe, but I don't necessarily know that we were done with Article 2, the mayor. Are there any motions that anyone has to amend the charter as it pertains to the mayor that we haven't already discussed?
We held my motion under Article 2, Section 2, to take all of the induction language contained in Article 2, Section 2, and then in the 4 other locations in the charter, and consolidate it into one standardized section, very much like what we did for vacancies, where we standardized the language of the vacancies. This would standardize the language of the induction across the entire charter, because it is not consistent with each other in various sections.
Is there any discussion that we would like to have on, any further discussion that we would like to have on that motion? Let's do this. Phil.
Randy, you sent those, right? I can't seem to find those.
I sent the articles and sections that are referenced, which is Article 2, Section 2, Article 4, Section 5, Article 8 does not contain any induction language and should probably have some in there. And then Article 9, Section 3. And then this gets into the RN 43 amendment that we held, which is Article 10, Section 12.
Rian, this is Patty. It may be helpful if you could, do you have some proposed language that can be considered? I think you had.
Well, we went over this last week where I can't actually do the language until we vote to make the change.
Okay.
The idea was, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, but it was, look, if we vote that we want to basically unify all of these sections, and I think that's really where you are with this, right?
Yes.
Okay, and I also, is it fair to say that this really is not necessarily a substantive change? It's more of a procedural or form change in the nature of the changes that we've already been making?
Yes, it is very much just a, it is not substantive at all. It's more of a, clerical change.
Okay, and in it's really more or less this, do we were more or less voting on the idea of making this change, not on the specific change. Is that correct?
Right. We can, when we come back for a second vote, we can, if we don't like the language, we can vote down the language.
So with that in mind, is there a motion to basically to unify all of those sections of the charter and make them consistent with one another?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Phil, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ludi,
Yes.
Samantha,
Yes.
Rian,
Yes.
Hillary,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
I vote yes. Julian,
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Good. All right. Any other motions under section 2, or I should say Article 2, the mayor of our charter, that people would like to discuss or raise?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Go ahead, Julian.
I make a motion to discuss powers of a mayor during a pandemic, and this doesn't have to be long, I believe, but it might be something we take home as homework to think about that and come up with language
Wait,
later.
but hold on, Julian, this isn't under Article 2, Section 2. I think that's going to come under Article 2, Section 4.
Okay, I misunderstood because Tom said any other considerations, but it's under, okay.
And I did say that. I didn't. To me, I mean, if someone makes a motion on another section of this particular article, then that's fine with me. But if someone
I'll just withdraw it for simplicity.
Yeah,
and,
well,
I'll
Julian,
make a motion further down the page.
yeah, but so then I guess if my question is this: are there any other motions that anyone would like to make under Article 2, Section 2 of the mayor in our charter?
Yes, I do, Tom. I'm looking at the agenda we have here, and it's some places are kind of puzzling. What we're talking about now is Article 2, Section 2. So that means so Article 2, Section 3, that's when we start talking about the salary. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, and Article 2, Section 2 is basically the length of his term, and it's his election in term, or her election in term, or the mayor's election in term, whomever it might be. So do we have any motions to amend the charter as it pertains to that section? Okay. All right. Moving on to Section 3, the mayor's salary. Do we have any motions to amend the charter as it pertains to that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. So let's have a discussion. Phil, what are your thoughts? Well, actually, Julian, should you make the
What's
motion?
the amendment?
Julian, should you specify what your motion? Should we? I think you
My
should
motion
specify
is
what
to
your
discuss and debate an increase or decrease in the
That's
present
not-
salary of a mayor.
I think we need to take this one at a time. Are you making a motion to increase, or are you making a motion to decrease? Having a motion to have a discussion doesn't get us anywhere.
Nope.
Okay. I'm not sure how to word it. I mean, because I could potentially decrease or increase. So how would you word that motion?
Well, how can you increase and decrease the salary at the same time? You can't.
No, to increase or to decrease. I mean, that's the debate we need to have. Maybe some members
We have
feel,
a debate. We need a motion on a particular amendment for us to vote on.
okay, I'll make a motion to increase the salary
To what number, Julian?
to match the rate of inflation since the last time the salary was set.
Which is how much?
I'm not sure of those figures. I mean, if the salary was set 10 years ago and inflation is 3%, the salary would go up by 30%.
Well, I can tell you this. I'm pretty sure that was my dad's salary when he was the mayor in 1986. So it's been that way for a long time.
Well, you know what then? I mean, if we're not really debating decrease or increase, I think I'm happy with what it is now. I'll withdraw the motion.
Any other motions regarding the mayor's salary? Okay, we're on to section 4. Vacancy in the office of the mayor. Any motions as it pertains to that section? All right, section 5.
Before you
Powers
move,
and
Tom,
duties.
before you move on, could I just,
Yeah.
I've got some additional notes in my charter, and I'll just bring this up and see if anyone feels that it needs to be discussed or if a motion needs to be made. But on the page, section 4, after the bullet points, the second paragraph after that says a vacancy shall be declared if the city council determines by a 2/3 vote of the members present that one or more of the above criteria are met. But I would say I question whether that needs to take place with a recall vote. Because after they've canvassed and determined the results of the election, doesn't that automatically, in my mind, remove that person, the mayor, for example, from their seat, and that it doesn't necessarily need to have now a 2/3 vote of the council to remove them when the voters have approved it.
So what that would be is that we would maybe pull out the period at the end of that sentence, add a comma, and say unless the person has been recalled by popular vote.
Yeah,
So
or
that-
except in the case of a successful recall election or something like that. I don't know. You know, we can talk about the actual language, but I guess if the concept is agreed upon, then we could work on the language for the next meeting.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said there because, correct me, and anybody else, Rian, I think that you know this stuff as well as anybody, but that sentence there really would run counter to a recall election. Is that, or
We do have language in the charter that says after a successful recall, the office is vacated immediately.
yeah,
So I think I will make the motion that we clarify that recalls do not apply, or I'll make a motion to clarify the section and add in language regarding recalls, and then I'll work with Patty to get the exact details of that language correct.
Julian?
Does the council not have to vote and certify the recall though?
Yes, they
Even
do, but it's in a different section of the charter.
Okay,
So this is really
Hillary.
in conflict with that, if you will.
Sorry.
it is. And
I'm
my
trying to get to everybody.
other question with that was if the recall was successful, but could the council have the power to vote not to accept the people's recall
No,
and not vote on it?
no.
Okay.
Hillary?
Okay, my question is about section 4.A. That's what we're looking at, right?
It's actually after section 4A. It's the paragraph, it's the second paragraph after the bullet points.
Yeah, it's on the next page. It's on
It's on
page
the next
5.
page. Yeah, page 5.
And it's just one sentence.
Oh, I see. Okay. Can I ask a question about section 4.A when we can?
Yeah, of course. But so let's do
Let's
this.
finish what we're talking about first. Yeah.
We'll circle right back to that. So is
I
there-
made the motion to
Yeah, is there-
clarify that language as it regards to recalls.
Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
second it.
Okay. Phil, how do you vote?
Oh, can we vote on the motion with not specific, with no specific language?
Yeah, that's what we've been doing.
So Phil, as I understand it, and anybody feel free to jump in and correct me. As I understand it, the motion is the idea that we will basically we will amend that sentence to make it conform with the realities and the powers of the recall election, so that there's no conflict between those two sentences. Does anybody think I have not stated that properly, if not eloquently?
Right. I think Phil's asking, we're not voting on that particular language yet. We're just voting on the ability for someone to clarify it. And then once it's been clarified, we can vote on the language.
That I agree. I think that is an accurate summation. And
Does that make sense, Phil?
Yeah, it does.
So
Okay.
it doesn't give anyone a carte blanche check. We see, it comes back to us and we see what they've said.
That's
and
right.
We get our
That's
votes. Yeah.
I vote yes.
Phil, in light of that, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Ludi,
Yes.
Samantha,
Yes.
Rian,
Yes.
Hillary,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
I vote yes. Julian,
Yes.
Kathy.
I just had a question here, that's all.
Go ahead.
I'm just trying to find,
Are you trying to find the section?
I'm looking under section 5, and I thought I had seen
So it's just
something.
above section 5. That's why.
Right, I know
Oh, okay.
what sentence. I'm not sure if we're on the same path, though.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't seem to find it right now, so I guess I'll abstain from it because
Okay.
I'm just not sure if we're on the correct path.
So, Patty, I think the vote here is 9 in favor, 1 abstention. All right. So, well, Hillary, I think that you had wanted to explore something under section 4, sub A. Is that correct?
Yes, I just had a question to clarify. So section 4.A, the fails to qualify by the first meeting of the city council. Can somebody explain what that means? Fails to qualify?
Yeah, I can answer that. That the after a person is elected, in this case the mayor, after they're elected, they have to qualify by taking the oath of office.
I see. Okay. So it has nothing to do with the election results because
That's correct.
we had language about age by election day, and that would okay. We're set. Good.
Okay. So I think that gets us back to section 5 and Julie.
Tom,
I think,
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Could I interrupt again? I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's
That's fine.
the next paragraph after the one we were just working on. It
Yes.
talks about that there has to be a special election called if there's a vacancy in the mayor, and the last sentence in that paragraph says, "This election shall be called within 30 days of the vacancy, unless the vacancy occurs within 3 months prior to the next election." So the election, in fact, doesn't have to be called or held, if you will, within 30 daes, but the city council has to take action to call an election within 30 days of the vacancy. So there's a very, very big distinction in the language there, because I can't have an election called within 30 days because that doesn't allow for absentee voting and that sort of thing, and we'd be in violation of state law by holding election that quickly. So I would propose, and the language again can be worked on, but instead of "this election shall be called within 30 days, which somewhat implies that it would be held within 30 days, that the city, instead of that, we'd say that the city council shall take action within 30 days to call a special election.
Okay.
Patty?
Yeah, go ahead, Julian.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but during the recall, I thought that if there was a vacancy with the mayor, the council chair was appointed automatically as acting mayor until the next scheduled election.
The city council chair can be the moderator of the meetings, but I don't know whether they would want to wait, say, 10 months or whatever until the next regularly scheduled election. So there is the ability to call a special election.
Right. But there's also, so the language isn't very clear. It doesn't state you have to. Technically, you can leave it you can leave it unfilled till the next November election, right?
The chair of the city council shall continue to have a vote as they're serving as in the mayor's position, but shall not have the veto power. So such special election shall be called for the purpose of electing a mayor to fill the vacancy, unless the vacancy occurs within 3 months of the election. So it's required to have a special election to fill the mayor's seat currently, unless it's within 3 months of the election.
Yeah. Thank you.
Tom?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, just a technical problem. My screen says host your Zoom meeting. I'm not seeing anything, but I guess you can still hear me. Can somebody help me out?
Unfortunately, I'm probably the last person to ask that question of. Is anybody else here that can help Ron? I know Julian, Hillary. What do we got?
Did he turn the video off?
Yeah, go ahead, Hillary.
Ron, can you tell us what you see on your screen?
Host your Zoom meeting, sign up, it's free, you get your own account for free.
Okay, hang on.
Should I?
Are you on a Mac or a PC?
PC.
Try doing Alt-Tab. And also, I'd like to point out that we lost James.
Oh, yep, we did.
Yes, Alt-Tab does work, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Oh yeah, where's James?
James has disappeared.
Here he comes.
There we go. He's on his way.
Hi, James. Are you back?
Yeah. Hey, did you notice I was gone?
We did.
Yeah, man.
I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened, but I'm back.
Well, we're glad to have it. In light of that, does anybody, and I think Julian, you may, does anybody have any motions as they pertain to Section 5 under the mayor's powers and duties?
Well, I'll motion to take Patty's suggestion and clarify the language in the final paragraph of Section 4 as it pertains to the duties of City Council.
Is there a
Seconded.
second?
Second.
Okay. Phil, how do you vote on this?
Tom,
Yes.
I just have a question.
Yes.
Should we be voting on these things without the verbiage in front of us?
Well,
I think at this point, it should only be for a discussion. We shouldn't be voting on things that we don't have in front of us.
well, and this wouldn't be necessarily the final vote in terms of, okay, look, this is what it's going to be. We're more or less voting on an idea, not on the actual language. I think the vote here is, are we going to vote to clarify what that 30-day period really is requiring, is making of a requirement by the charter, and that then what happens is that when we get some language to that effect, Kathy, then we can say, yes, we do like that language, or no, we don't like that language, or we kind of like it, but we'd like to change it. Am I stating that accurately? Is there anybody else on this committee that would like to jump in as far as what I just shared with Kathy?
So
Julian?
then when the document is presented, then we will take the two votes.
That is my understanding. Hillary's nodding. I'm getting that from her. Julian, you were going to say something.
Right. It's just a debate, but if we discuss this tonight and vote, it might not even get to verbiage if we vote that we're not changing it. Right. So, but if we do change it, there'll be definite rules and regulations that we can vote on at some point after. So I think this is more of a discussion on what we feel about certain issues.
Okay. All right. Kathy, does that answer your question?
Yes, as long
Okay.
as we have the understanding, we will be taking the 2 votes when something is presented to us in a document.
No, the 1 vote. Tonight would be the first vote.
No, that's
Actual
wrong.
language is the
That
second
is
vote.
incorrect. No, that is incorrect. We cannot be voting on something that has not been written down and reviewed. You are wrong.
Right.
I'd just like to state that this is how we've been doing it now. We've taken, and usually we do have something written down that says like the list of Patty's changes were all written down and we voted whether or not to do them. There are also amendments that have come up during the meetings, like for instance, changing the length of term or the residency requirement to a year. But the whole reason that we do the 2 votes on the concept is so that the wordsmither, so that I can go work with Patty on the exact language, and we're not spending our entire 2 hours here going back and forth over exact language. So essentially, once we know that we want to make a concept, if I come back in 2 weeks and we don't like the language, we can vote down the language and say we still want the concept, but now we need different language.
And you are totally wrong on that. Totally wrong.
This is how we've been doing it.
Well, you are wrong.
Tom, I'm going to ask you to step in here because this is how we've been doing it for the past 6 weeks now.
Well, at this point, I think what we do is we vote on the motion, and we will see where we are with this today, and then we'll come back with some new language, and we'll vote on the motion at that point, and then we will, either that will determine it or it won't. But I don't necessarily know that having this discussion any further at this point is productive. So in light of that, Phil, how do you vote on? Well, wait a minute, hold on. Did we get a second to the motion in the first place?
Yes, we did.
Okay, and then I see Hillary's hand up and Phil's hand up. Hillary, go ahead.
So I know you don't want to discuss it, but I think there's some confusion, and I don't want anybody's feelings to be hurt. So I know you don't want to discuss it, Tom, but I think because we're using new technology and it just feels different, it's important that everybody understands. So I wanted to clarify a little bit more and see if it made sense. And if I'm wrong, let me know that I'm wrong. But I don't want to speak further, Tom, unless it's okay.
No, please do.
Okay, so I think, Kathy, what happened is there was a section of language that wasn't clear. So we discussed that it's not clear and made some suggestions that it just needs to be clarified. And so what we're voting on now is, so we discussed what wasn't clear in the language. What we're voting on now is the ability for Rhiann to work with Patty to clarify the language. And then we will have that language directly in front of us in black and white. And then we get to discuss it. Do we like it as is? Does it need to be changed further? And so if we like it as is, we take the vote, we vote, it's approved. If we don't agree, we can change that on that spot. And we have done this before, and then we could change it on the spot and then vote on it like that. So I think you both are kind of saying the same thing, at least to me, I think you are. But we're not voting and accepting anything concrete yet. We've just all sort of had a discussion that the language needed to be clarified. And once it's clarified, we get to vote whether we like it or not. Does that make sense?
Hillary, I agree with you. Once we have the language and we can take the 2 votes.
Okay, so your question is whether we vote 2 more times, and I think what I heard Rhiannon saying is that we hadn't been, that this is essentially the first vote to clarify, and everybody's weighing in on how they think it needs to be clarified, and that Rhiannon will bring it back if we all like it and we all approve it. We hadn't been taking a second vote, but Kathy, you seem to think that we were. Is that right?
Yes, we were taking 2 votes.
And I think with everything that we've changed to date, we've had the discussion, Rhiannon's bring it back, and that vote actually was the second vote. So at least that's my understanding as well. James, do you want to weigh in?
I'm seeing.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, James and then Phil, because Phil's had his hand up for a bit. But yes, let's do that.
Yeah, so the way we have been operating is for somebody to make an oral motion and then for us to take a vote on it. If the motion passes, then at the next meeting, we take a vote on the actual language of that motion. So like, for instance, last meeting, we had several motions. One of them was to eliminate the mayor's position. That didn't pass, but assuming it did, that would have been voted on. We would have eliminated the mayor's position, and then we would have voted on the actual language as the second vote. And same thing with one of the motions that did pass last week, which was to add the residency requirement of the mayor. That wasn't something we had written down in front of us. That was a verbal motion that was made. It was voted in favor of, and today we took the second vote of basically the exact language on that. So that's how we have been operating.
And Phil.
Okay. So I think I understand where Kathy's coming from. You know, we take 2 votes on items. I think the difference here is because we have the amend, we have the other ones, we had the language in front of us that we were looking to change. We had a discussion on that particular item, and then we went to change it. So it makes it a little different, you know, especially doing it like this. So I do agree that, you know, we can take a motion today, we can vote on the motion today, and then on the next meeting, once we have the language, we can then review that language and vote if we want to adopt that language or reject it.
Okay. Ron, yes.
Yes, again, my comfort zone is really not here, and one of the basic premises I usually use is when in doubt, keep it as it is in the charter, and I tend to agree with Kathy and Hillary as well, that I'd rather have some of these things ironed out more when we're back and have our regular face-to-face charter meeting. So every time that you go around the table and say, how do you vote right now? I'm still a little confused, and I'm afraid I might have second thoughts, but I think that Hillary tried to reassure me that what we're doing this evening is not cast in stone. We're just making some things that Patty wanted and put changes in her 13 or whatever it was, and then later on we will make a final decision. Is that correct?
Ron, I think that's pretty much right. It was that the language is unclear. We had the discussion about the language, but we won't finalize it until we have it in black and white in front of us. But we at least first have to have a vote for someone to make the language clearer so that we can look at it. So that's what we'd be voting on now, but we are not committing to any language tonight at all.
Okay, if that's how it states, when Tom asks us, you know, how we're going to vote, I would certainly raise my hand and say in the affirmative for that.
Okay. All right.
Tom, could I speak for one moment, please?
Please.
I apologize that, you know, I didn't mean to throw a monkey wrench into the works here, but I've got, as we go through the charter, I've got a lot of little handwritten, just one word added here, might add clarification. I had written a note next to this section that, you know, when the mayor's recall was coming up, that was a question that in reading it wasn't clear. So, I mean, when I gave you that list of 12 or whatever items during the public hearing, those were kind of the big items. But then as I didn't give you a list of every single note that I have in my charter. So when I assumed, and maybe I assumed incorrectly, that when we were going through section by section at some point, that I would just, kind of chime in and say, oh, could we clarify this? Could we add this word here? And so, I don't mean to kind of blindside anybody, but I wasn't sure what the appropriate time to bring those things up might be. So, I'm happy to, as we're going section by section, I mean, if you want me to, put in a bunch of amended documents and send those to you in advance if we're going to be talking about a certain section. But I'm also happy to talk kind of during the meetings and just mention these. And I just thought that if you're not interested in, in that concept, then I wouldn't take the time to provide an amended document. But if you think the concept is reasonable, then we could at least, hammer out some language, and then you can talk about the language later. So I apologize. I don't mean to be, kind of throwing in a kink in the works.
No, I mean, Kathy, the worst case scenario that's going to happen if you send us something, at least from my perspective, if you send us something, 10 days before a meeting, 8 days before a meeting, whatever it is, the worst thing that's going to happen is we're just going to be like, no, we don't want to do it. But I don't think having that people share information about this process all the time during the time leading up to a meeting. So those are my thoughts anyway. In light of that, I think we've had discussion on this. And did we have a second? Did we even have a motion to make that amendment? And did we have a second?
I made the motion.
I think I seconded it.
Okay, I thought so too. We kind of got out there for a while. All right. So in light of that, Phil, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ludi,
Yes.
Samantha,
Yes.
Rian,
Yes.
Hillary,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
I vote yes. Julian,
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So now and despite my efforts, I think we are finally now to section 5 under the mayor's powers and duties. Are there any motions to amend the charter as it pertains to section 5, the mayor's powers and duties?
I make a motion to discuss the powers to amend. It's not really an amendment. I was thinking of a debate on the powers of the mayor during a disaster or an epidemic, what powers they have, but there's nothing written in the charter on it. So
Can I make a suggestion, Julian?
Yeah.
That sorry, subcommittee C, but I know that there's a whole ton of other towns, and I know for just here in Kennebec County, I know that Hallowell and Augusta do have emergency provisions. So before we even start thinking about if we want to make an amendment, and more particularly where we want to make an amendment, it might be really nice to get some information on how other towns have their emergency ordinances.
Sure, and I think it's going to be quite a big debate. Does it go to the city manager? Does it go to a council? That it's really something in the backburn. Tom, just put a note to make sure it doesn't fall through the cracks while we're amending the charter. And I think it should also be clear, when we're discussing this, I'll just throw it out there so I don't forget or lose my train of thought, that the powers should also be specified, maybe different or broader powers, depending if it's a national disaster or a state disaster. So I agree with Rian on that, but let's not forget that before the charter's closed. Thank you.
I will say, for my part, I do think that is a worthwhile discussion for us to be having in light of what is happening now and kind of what has happened on a political level just over the last couple of weeks. So I think that is a discussion to have. In light of that, any other motions as it pertains to the mayor?
Well, can we officially send that suggestion to subcommittee C?
So do we need to make a motion on that? Would anyone like to make a motion? Let me rephrase this. Would anyone like to make a motion to send, Julian, how would you phrase it? Rian, how would you phrase that? Either way, I'm looking for some guidance here.
Make a motion to send to subcommittee C to investigate powers, duties, responsibilities of a mayor during a disaster-pandemic.
Okay.
I will second the motion.
Okay. Phil, how do you vote on the motion?
Ask the subcommittee, see if they want more work.
Yes. That's one way of putting it. That is one way of putting
I'm
it.
not in that subcommittee, so.
We got it.
Okay, I vote yes.
Okay. Ludi,
Yes.
Samantha,
Yes.
Rian,
Yes.
Hillary,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Ron.
Yes, for Subcommittee C.
I also vote that, yes. Julian,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
good. Okay. All right. Any other motions as it pertains to the mayor?
Yeah.
I have a motion, James.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah.
James, you can go
So-
first.
All right. So my motion is to section 5, subsection G. So subsection G says the mayor has the shall appoint with approval of the majority of the city council members present, members of boards and commissions. And so I know that this is, this comes up all the time with commissions and various groups that the mayor appoints. And obviously there's been one in the news recently. But I had heard this mentioned in one of our earlier meetings, and I apologize because I can't remember who mentioned it, but I thought it was, maybe it came up on one of the subcommittee reports or something. But the motion that I'd like to make to this section is that the mayor shall appoint with approval of the majority of the city council members present, members of boards and commissions, and shall do so in a manner that, and I'm not going to come up with the perfect wording right now, but basically so that the boards and the commissions that the mayor appoints are gender balanced when possible.
I'll second that. I'll second that motion for debate purposes.
All right. Any discussion on this motion?
Yes.
Julian, go ahead.
Part of the concern, and if I'm understanding James, it also involves the council in this decision. Is that correct?
Right. I mean, it's ultimately up to the council to
So
approve.
my concern is the mayor has so few powers at the moment, and to limit them, if you limit any of them, you're really killing the position off completely. I think there's a lot of people that get involved other than just the mayor. When people are appointed, people on the boards will recommend people. The city manager might, constituents. So it's really not, the mayor doesn't operate in a vacuum where he wakes up and says, oh, I'm going to appoint this person. I think there's a fair bit of thought that goes into it. And I've also seen with most committees, or a lot of them, you can't even get people. So, but I think as far as speaking to gender, I mean, you could be up for discrimination if you're gender balancing it. Just say you're putting a man or a woman on because it's a certain gender is also, to me, almost a reverse kind of discrimination. I think it should be the best person for the job. And I hate to be appointing things based on gender, whether it's male or female. It's a slippery slope. I mean, we could have a whole criteria. And you would hope that the people of Waterville that had democratically elected a mayor would be cognizant enough to have some power, that they weren't that sexist. I mean, even our own, our mayor at the moment has seemed to have balanced it out. I mean, Samantha was appointed to the planning board. I think it's a sticky, slippery slope, and we're bogged with PC issues, and I'd hate to make it worse. I mean, we're a city that balances our boards purely based on gender. I'm not in agreement with.
Okay, so now that Julie kind of got us started off. No, Ron, we're going to go right down the list. We're just going to go right down the list. Phil, further thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, I understand, what I believe I do understand what James is trying to do, and it's commendable. I just believe that that would be a slippery slope to engage in, because then are we going to be balancing those board or commission based on race, also based on religious preferences, based on sexual orientation, based on ethnicity. I mean, it starts to become really complex, right? Just to inject one category and say, this is one of the criteria that we want the sporting commissions to be looked at. I mean, we would hope that, the person making these decisions will have, what's the word? Will be somebody who would think about those things and actually try to do as much as possible to have balanced board and commissions. But if we're going to mandate, we're going to propose to, to point out the specific sections, then it opens the door to all these other, areas that people will say, hey, but what about this, and what about race and sexual orientation and religion and so forth. And I think that my thought is that we should not engage in being that specific as to who gets elected in the board or commission.
Ludi.
I think it makes complete sense to have balanced boards and commissions when possible. I think that's a key word here. And of course, we would want to have the best representation possible. So I don't think it hurts to have that language in the charter. And I'd point out that my subcommittee spoke with those city councilors, and we noticed that it was the female councilors who brought this up. So it's clearly is a problem that is recurring, that they aren't always appointed to boards and committees that they're interested in and they actually are qualified for. And it just it's clearly not just it's a real issue that people have brought up and brought to our attention, because we didn't bring it to them. We just consulted them on our subcommittee and they brought it up. So I think that if we take that into account, the fact that several female city councilors brought it forward and they were elected and they're trusted officials and they've had to deal with this, that I think it also just in my mind makes complete common sense to try to have as balanced a board and commission as possible.
So I really appreciate this sentiment, and I think Ludi makes some really great points. I will say that I do agree with Julian in the fact that it might be very difficult, but I think that the when possible language kind of helps with that a little bit. I guess I'm just interested to hear what other people have to say.
Rian.
I think historically politics has been very much defined as a boys' club. And I think we can very much see that, if we go down and look at the halls in City Hall and we look at all of those portraits, we can see that there is a significant and substantial amount of men there and not very many women. Going to what Ludi said on that same subcommittee, yes, I think every single female counselor that we talked to brought it up as an issue, even for themselves getting access to how things are done on city council, coming up against that old boys club. And Tom, I'm not going to pick on you, and I'm totally picking on you right now, but your dad was mayor, and your dad, has business connections, or, maybe he goes golfing with people, and those people now have access in when there's this commission that's just been formed and we need to appoint people, kind of a thing. And so I twofold like this. I like this because the population of the city is about 50-50. So why shouldn't our boards and commissions also be 50-50 in that regard? And I like it because it gives women access to politics in a way that they haven't been historically able to get access to politics.
Okay. Hillary.
Thanks. I see some other hands raised, and I wanted to remind everyone that I think we're just going in alphabetical order. And
That's
and
right.
then
I'm just going right down the
circle
list.
back. Exactly.
Everybody is going to get to talk.
Yep.
Everybody's going to get to talk.
Yep. I wanted to thank James for proposing this. I'd like to say that I agree with the proposal, and I thought I'd add a little bit of insight. So gender bias is something that most people don't recognize as having. And so what you have to do is you have to look at leadership roles. You have to look at what the makeup of these committees are. And Julian, I think you made the suggestion that maybe it wasn't that women wanted to be on them. And I would argue,
I don't remember
maybe
saying that.
No. I'm saying that, that we have a hard time getting people on committees, kind of thing.
People
So,
on, not women.
right. So I think that the language was when possible. So if there's an option, meaning there's someone who's interested, then the answer should be yes. I like to point out that we're probably all going to the same assumption, which is the majority is held by men, not women. And for leadership to reflect the people, it needs to reflect the people literally. So if our gender balance, or if the gender is about 50-50 in Waterville, then the question would be, if there are people who are interested in serving, why wouldn't we try to make sure that leadership reflected it? And so a lot of times when we talk about women getting into leadership, we think about bad men getting in their way. And I just really want to, I want to implore the men on this committee to understand the reality that a lot of women feel, which is, it's not just that we need bad men to get out of the way. We need good men to invite us. And sometimes, as Rhian was saying, we don't get that invitation because of a lack of connections that are often formed. And that's consistent on every level of leadership in our country, everywhere. So if the language is when possible, that would imply that if there's a possibility of gender balance, we strive for that. If there's not, we don't. But I want to raise a point that Julian made, which is, well, we don't want gender, we want the best person. And I'd like to point out then that that assumption would be that a woman wouldn't be the best person.
No, not
Because the majority, well, okay, so the majority of them,
No,
of these
don't put
committees.
those words in my mouth. That's
No,
not
what I'm saying is that the majority of the committees are men. So really what we're talking about is we're talking about trying to get more women involved. So what we're saying is if women want to serve, let's try to give them that opportunity to serve when possible. And if it's not possible, then it's not possible. But the idea is women need access, and we're asking the men on this committee to try to give us some access. And I say women, we need to we probably need to leave room for growth, that definition of gender is open. So we're not saying men or women, we're just saying gender. But actions and how people govern really depends on who's in the room. And if you don't have people that are reflective of your constituency, then there are things that are different. And my last point, and I'm sorry, I've spoken a little longer. If you don't believe me, then I'd like to draw your attention to several meetings that we've had before we came up with going around and taking turns. And the 4 women on this committee regularly got spoken over and didn't get a word in edgewise. And that's part of the reason we came up with the format that we came up with. It's a different experience, and that representation matters so much. That's it.
Thank you, Hillary.
James.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add other than what's been said, which I all agree with. I do remember, I don't remember exactly, but I do remember it might have been 2 years ago or something like that, where I believe there was 3, maybe 4 women on the city council. I think it was 3 actually, 3 out of 7. But none of the females were appointed to the budget commission. And I remember it when it happened, and I wasn't sort of as versed in the city charter as I am now. So it kind of struck me as odd, and that was before I ever read the charter. But I think that if we put this language in, I think it does make it fair. I think it makes it possible for everybody who wants to serve on a commission or a board to at least have that chance. So I'm obviously going to vote in favor of the motion. I made it, but I think it's important that we all do so. Thank you.
Julian.
Yeah, it's such a slippery slope. I really is. I mean, I'm going back to past mayors. Of course, there's men on the walls there. Those were the times, okay? Women were restricted back then. So you're going to see a history where women weren't involved in politics. But without even putting this into effect, these new changes, you are going to start seeing more female mayors because times have changed. So you're looking at the history of, social structure on that wall, which was always about men. And, Karen Heck was a mayor. She was heavily female dominated. You had hardy girls, a lot of committees that way. And, James, you don't have to answer this, but how many women lawyers in your practice while you're asking for this? And would you hire someone who...
We're taking applications. And it doesn't matter if you're a male or female, so spread the word.
Right. So the question is, if the person was not very qualified and if there was a man that wasn't very qualified and a woman that was way more qualified, of course you're going to hire the woman over that position. And the verbiage where possible, let's say it's the water district, you have an engineer who stripped pumps and has balanced chemicals their whole life, and a woman applied who had never been in that field. Are you going to say they have to hire? What is the definition of where possible? I mean, that's a slippery slope too. And, it really concerns me because when things like this happen, it actually discredits women because people say, oh, they were appointed affirmative action. Women are strong enough in this society, and I have every confidence a woman can climb without putting in these handicaps. And if women want to start appointing people to committees, they have every option to run for mayor, and they can appoint a complete woman makeup if they want to. So I urge to vote no on that. Thank you.
Kathy.
I definitely agree with what Julian has said and Phil has said. I think this would be an unnecessary thing to add. Look at our commission right now. We have 4 females on this committee. It needs to be the best people for whatever the board is, or I'm reading the boards or commissions. So I think this is unnecessary. I think we are just setting ourselves up for discrimination suits because we're so happy with everything, as we know.
Sorry about that, Kathy.
Oh, sorry, Tom.
As long as you're not suing me, you're all good.
Kathy, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
In the state of Maine, we've had 2 wonderful female senators, Senator Susan Collins and Margaret Smith. Regarding mayors, Julian was right, especially in those days. But if you go through that wall, most of those were very educated men. And Mayor Nail was a fabulous mayor. I know some of you don't even know who he is, and that's okay. But many of us who have lived here forever, we do. So I do take insult to that comment. And Hillary, I do agree with you with what you said about the beginnings of our charter meetings, but especially one person just continuously talked. So it was wonderful. We came up with the method of we will go around the table and everyone will have a time to speak. So Hillary, I definitely agree with you on that part. I agree with you, Hillary, what you just said. It should be the best person. It should be the most qualified person. So I would like to see this dropped as a motion or a suggestion or a discussion.
All right. So for my part, just a couple of thoughts.
Tom.
Yeah.
Yes. Can
Ron, did you not get to go?
Now, wait just a minute. Now, I can say, now you overlook me. I would like to call this age discrimination, and I think we should have
My man, right?
over a certain age of 65 who have the experience. I think we should have so many of those
There you go.
on a committee as well. And as we have been stated here, dedication is on volunteers or anybody, even people that get good pay. There's no guarantee they're going to be dedicated. I hate to lock into the mayor who's been elected by popular vote. Apparently the majority of people in the city of Waterville believe in this person. I don't want to handicap him and reduce the quality of the person he puts on these boards because he's locked into getting gender free or whatever you want to call it.
Ron, I am sorry that I did not call on you previously. I don't know how I skipped you on my list, and I did not call on you just to set you up to make that argument. That was a purely an accident. I also skipped myself on the list. So
Actually, Tom, I'm really glad that you did skip me because that gave me a chance to think about proving a point about age discrimination.
I can tell you that I don't believe that consciously or subconsciously I was discriminating against you based on your age. I just missed you on the list. I missed myself on the list.
No, I'm not saying that, Tom. I'm saying that by you doing that, it was able to prove my point that, someplace this is going to stop, because right now you're handicapping the mayor on finding the best candidates. If he has to say so many of this category, so many of this category, it waters down the quality. No, I have every respect for you, Tom, and I have no problems with you skipping me at this point.
Okay. Just a few things I'd like to add. First of all, I am a big proponent of language not having meaning, but language being enforceable. And when possible, or if possible, that's not going to be enforceable language. It's not going to be language that someone's going to be able to say, well, look, I mean, there are 6 men and 7 and 1 woman on this commission, or there are 5 women and 2 men on this commission, and there was a possibility that it could have. That's not going to be enforceable language. That is language that is in the statute just to be there. And I understand the sentiment behind it, but if it's not enforceable, I don't really necessarily know how much value there is in us putting it in there. The other thing is that Phil's point is a very good point. And it's simply this. If we're going to go and we're going to make a movement to protect or to encourage a certain part of the demographic that may be considered a minority, then we really have to kind of do that with everyone. We can't say, well, look, we're going to make sure that these are gender balanced, but that they're not racially balanced, or that they're not balanced by religion. We need to make sure that we have a certain number of people that are that the Islamic faith, or that are Jewish, or that are Catholic, or whatever it might be. We're not addressing that. We're not going to address where people are from, where they are on the face of the earth, or the color of their skin. And if we're not doing that, then I think that there may be the impression that there's a little bit of impropriety here. And then the last point that I'd like to make is simply this. There may be a situation right now where, or in the next round of elections, where there's a board that is appointed where there are 7 Hispanic women on a particular commission. And those 7 Hispanic women may absolutely all be the best candidates for that job. And I would hate to think that we would then have to go in and say, well, look, we need, we need 2 white guys and an African-American guy to balance this all out. I don't know that that's I don't know that that's the place that we would want to be. I don't. In light of that, Julian, I see you got your hand up. Phil, I see you've got your hand up. I think we've gone around. I think we know where everybody is on this. Do we really need to have a second round of discussion on this?
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes.
All right, then let's do it, but let's make it quick because it's 7:18, guys. All right, Phil, I'm gonna go right down in alphabetical order. Phil's first, Julian, Rhea, and Hillary. Phil.
All right.
Oh, that's not Julian. Julian, you'd be last. Phil, you're first.
Okay, so I mean, I agree with the fact that we need to be able to promote different demographic of our population because we need representation on all the spectrum, right? When Hillary's saying when we look at the pictures of mayor, they're not women. I will say when we look at pictures, there's not a single black person, right? I am black, and I think I was the first black city councilor in the city of Waterville, right? And I can tell you the old boys club apply to everybody, right? It doesn't really matter. I don't think it doesn't matter who is in the old boys club. They'll I think it applies to everyone, and making it really specific to just women, right, kind of leaves everybody else's out, right? Because then I will say, okay, so now what are we doing? Are we favoring women over black people? Are we favoring women over people from different religion? I am all for having women be part of boarding commissions the same way I am for African American, for Asian, for people from different sexual orientation. I am all for that, right? I just have a problem with making it very specific because then we are kind of removing an entire side of the population from the discussion and bringing that to the point that Tom made.
Yeah.
Is somebody the thing that's and bringing it back to the point where it's not really enforceable, right? It isn't. It's kind of a wish list. We're hoping that it would happen, but then we bring it back to the point where now there's 7 women and that who are very qualified. Now we have to make it okay. We need a black guy. We need a transgender. We need such and such. Which we do need to have all these people represented in our boards and commission. But I believe that is not something that I would be more comfortable in saying that we want all our board and commission to be diverse, right? That is open. That is an open spectrum that I can get behind, but making it really specific, like that leaves the door for a lot of things that I don't think we want to open the door for.
Okay. And then let's see here. Next is Rian.
So Tom, if the issue is enforceable language, we could vote on the intent and worry about enforceable language. I do think, though, when possible does cover, I mean, you could get into more detail when possible, including, qualifications, and all of that stuff. But if the intent is to give women more access to boards and commissions in the city, then we should vote to give women more access to boards and commissions in the city. And there's been also a lot of talk of, other minority groups. This is something that has specifically been brought up by women in conversations with women. As James said, it was something that he noticed. And if we want to have a discussion about other minorities and access to boards and commissions, then let's have a discussion about, other minorities. But let's not sit here and say that we're going to deny women access simply because we're not giving Hispanic men access, simply because we're not giving African American women access. Let's focus on what the issue is here, and the issue specifically here is about giving women access. And I would love a conversation where we talk about, making sure that boards and commissions are diverse on a number of levels. But this was brought up specifically for women, and it should be specifically about women. And the final point I want to make is that I've actually been on both sides of this before coming out. Living life with the, under the label of being female. And then after coming out, there are a lot of things that change when you transition. But overwhelmingly, the biggest thing that I have noticed is that I am given the benefit of the doubt in more situations than I literally ever thought possible. Little things, we're talking like even little things at the grocery store, or things that come up at work, conversations with my doctor, have all significantly changed, because men get the benefit of the doubt more than women do. And that's just a fact of the matter. And so when we're talking about qualifications and who's qualified for positions, a lot of these boards and commissions don't really have any qualifications. It's literally who lives in this city and who is interested in this position. And when overwhelmingly men are in power, and that's just the situation even now, they're going to give men the benefit of the doubt more than they give women the benefit of the doubt. And I can say this because I've lived it on both sides of the issue. And so this is also why I'm so strongly for this amendment. Is it's a way of enforcing and guaranteeing that men, or that women, get the same consideration that men are given very freely right now.
Hillary.
So Rhiannon sort of brought up the point that I was going to bring up. We're talking about boards and commissions. And so Patty could probably answer this. Do we have requirements and qualification lists for these boards and commissions?
Actually, on the city's website, under boards and commissions, we have job descriptions, if you will, for the boards and commissions, giving some, what they'd be required to do, how frequently the board meets, what skills that they, would be helpful if they had. So, for example, the planning board, it would be helpful if they had experience reading drawings and plans and looking at, developments or whatever, and that they have to be available to meet, once a month on Mondays usually, or a board.
But I'm talking about, we're talking about experience specific, right? So we're talking about not whether you're available on a Monday, right? We're talking about sort of job specific qualifications. Like if you were applying for a job and you need to have a certain degree for that job.
Right.
Do our boards and commissions that we're talking about, by and large, I understand there could be a benefit if you happen to have one, but by and large, are there specific qualifications for these?
Well, again, each board is a little bit different because some are established by bylaws through private and special laws of the legislature. So they talk about, membership and the numbers and where they're from and that sort of thing. But for our, our standing committees locally, we don't have anything specific. Some require residency in the city, right. Some do not.
Right, but these aren't qualifications that have anything to do with education or experience. You're talking about living in the city, right?
Yeah, basically,
kind of
yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So Rhiannon's point was was in general valid. If we're talking about whether someone has the best experience, we're not talking about boards and commissions that have suggested qualifications. If we want to add that, that's a discussion for another time. What we're talking about, and Julian, you made a really nice point, times are different, right? I think that's important to consider. Times are different. Now let's look at our board and commissions. Let's look at let's look at people in positions of power in our city and say, times are different. Do these boards and commissions reflect that? If they did on their own, we wouldn't be having this discussion. If they did, we wouldn't be having the discussion. So I'm asking you, and not every woman feels this way. So Kathy, I really appreciate that we're not on the same page, but you've got 3 other women telling men here, women need you to make room for us and to invite us. We are telling you that you actually have to make an intentional movement to make room for women at the table, or women won't be there. And they're not there. They're not, Ron, I'm telling you, they're not there because women aren't interested. They're just not there because they're not considered. And the argument is often, we want the most qualified person, which again, Julian, I know that's not what you were saying. I'm saying that argument then suggests that we aren't qualified. So I'm saying, Tom, I disagree with you. I think the language, when possible, would be enforceable. If you've got women who are interested in serving on the planning board, and you've got men who are interested and there aren't enough women, you make room for the woman. That's how you enforce it, okay? If it's all men, then maybe someone somewhere in this city needs to make an intentional statement of, we'd like to invite more women to join these things, and we will make sure that you can. Because maybe women aren't stepping up because they don't think they're going to be chosen. Because let's be frank, majority are filled by men. Thank you.
And well, okay. So hold on, we got to do this by alphabetical order here. Julian, I think you're next, and then and then Kathy.
So
and then Samantha hasn't spoken on this, so we'll get to her. But go ahead, Julian. And guys, let's keep in mind it's 7:31 here.
Yeah, I went to a mixed boarding school in England. So the women and young girls that came to our school were taught they can be anything they want to be. They weren't told that they're going to be housewives. So I grew up seeing no boundaries for women. Now, the fact that Janet Mills is the governor without special rules, it can be done. If she had special rules and affirmative appointment on it, then people would say she got in because she had to fit the quota, but she did it on her own. Mrs. Thatcher, the longest serving female in a gang of the most vicious male politicians, ran them all for 15 years, and she never once played the misogyny card or said, you know, it's because you're men that you interrupt the commission. If I don't agree with you, Hillary, it's because I don't agree with you, not because you're a woman. It's that simple. You could be man, anything. If I don't agree, I don't see a gender when we're debating issues. Mrs. Thatcher never once used misogyny card in 15 years, ever. And she took those people on. And furthermore, Karen Heck, a woman, endorsed a male for mayor over a female candidate running. And Elizabeth Warren has endorsed a man for president over a female running for president. So to me, the very talk of it is just such an issue that really, I think, cripples good women getting into politics. Women have all the power, and I have all faith, the same way I raised my daughter. And when you start coming down to that, I respect Janet Mills. She did it on her own. She didn't have to have that card played, and now she can really hold the trophy. Thank you.
All right. Kathy, Samantha, and and then
Ron.
yeah, and then Ron.
H
Bill, I know you've spoken on this before, but after Ron, we got to vote on this thing. So
I don't
Kathy-
think Ludi's had a second chance to speak either.
Yeah, I'll put my hand up and I can go last or whenever.
Okay. Then we're still going. Who did I say? Kathy, go ahead.
Tom, I just reiterate what Julian just said. I think this was not even an item worth discussing tonight. Not only Mrs. Thatcher, who I have followed greatly, but, let's talk about Queen Elizabeth. Let's talk about the German Chancellor. I think this was a bunny rabbit trail that we shouldn't have gone down tonight. We've wasted all this time, and I think it would be a very bad disservice to put that in, because that is opening you up for, again, everyone, I'm sorry, Tom, everyone is so lawsuit with discrimination that I think we just need to drop this one. And I agree with what Phil said. So my point is, let's drop this one.
Kathy, for what it's worth, there's very few things that I have heard about that I haven't heard about lawyers at this point. So that doesn't bother me at all. Don't worry about that. Samantha, you're up.
Okay, so I just wanted to touch on a couple things. I am not typically one that really is as super passionate about this as Hillary, and I really greatly appreciate women like Hillary that do stand up. But I will say, I'm a younger woman, and I remember being in Ludi's shoes, being even younger, and really having to earn a place at the table. And I know it sounds cliche. I know that people constantly saying women are earning their place at the table. It is a fight, and it is just something that is hard to explain. Just like I don't know what it's like to be a minority. It's very simple. Well, other than when I lived in Tanzania and was a minority there and got a different perspective. But I will say, I really appreciate the sentiment of this. I think that we've said a couple things that I actually don't know are true. So the first one is that it ties the mayor down to something. I don't think that this actually ties the mayor down to anything. I don't think that it means that if Julian is the only person that's applied for the open spot on the planning board, that means that the mayor now needs to go find a woman to replace him. I don't think that it ties anybody down to anything. I also don't know that it's saying it's specific to women. It's saying, let's just balance these things. We've said, I've heard it by multiple people, that we're just forcing the mayor to, and these aren't your words, but this is kind of how it's coming across. You're just forcing the mayor to appoint women. And that's not what this is doing. And that's not, I don't believe that's James's intent. It's to make things a little bit more balanced. When there are multiple women on the city council and not one of them is asked to be on a special committee, that is actually an issue. And I know Julian brought up me being on the planning board, and I wanted to address that for a minute as well. So Nick appointed me to the planning board. It was awesome. But the reason why Nick appointed me to the planning board is because a man suggested to Nick that he appoint me to the planning board. Not because he personally came to me or because I even knew that I could apply for it. It was because someone put my name in and suggested I might be a good candidate, and they encouraged me to seek that. The reason why I am on this commission is not because I thought to myself, I think I can fight for this. This is what I'm qualified to be on there. It's because someone came to me and they said, you'd be a really great candidate for this. You're qualified to be there. And they helped me get there. So it's doing the entire conversation disservice to say that women can just step up and do it themselves, because I'm telling you, how difficult that is. And when we're talking about, I mean, I don't know Janet Mills's story. I don't think that she just woke up one day and said, I think I'll become the first woman governor. Like, there's been an entire journey of people encouraging her and lifting her along the way and doors opening. And that is how she got to where she is. I would also like, because we're bringing up these large national things, I'd like to just call our attention to the Supreme Court, because we have women on the Supreme Court, and they're there because people have been very mindful that that court needs to be more balanced. And it's not because it's in the Constitution or anything like that, but it is because people are very aware of it and very mindful of it, and they understand the importance of women being in those high leadership roles. And some of those women have been some of the best leaders we could ever imagine. And I just think that if we're not encouraging that type of environment, then I think we could be really missing out on some really qualified, very great people to serve on commissions that don't even know that they should be on them. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Ludi and then Ron.
So everything Sam just said was just really incredible. And I'd echo all of that. She made some really great points. And so did Hillary. Because it's just, I'm gonna reiterate everything they said, that it's just so hard for women to get into these positions of power. And those few that you've listed have worked, you can't even imagine how hard they worked and how many people, as Sam said, had to open those doors for them and really keep them going, because they've gone through so much and they keep getting pushed down and doors close on them, and people have to help lift them up and help encourage them, because it is so tough and you can't really understand that until you're going through it. So the point of this language is to just help make it possible and come closer to leveling the playing field for women, so they can have that extra stepping stone of being invited to join these boards, and just even knowing that it's possible. Just having the language in the charter can at least point to them, give them the idea that maybe someday they can actually make a difference in their community, and that they're welcome in these rooms that are usually held up by men. So it's not it's not some malicious PC amendment that we're trying to propose here. It's mainly just a way to help people get involved, and everyone on Charter Commission here, we all clearly really care about the future of the city and people's involvement. And I just think it makes sense to open those doors and encourage engagement and help women. It makes sense to me, and I just echo everything that Hillary, Rhian, Sam, and James already said.
Last word, Ron, and then we're gonna vote.
Quickly make one point off of what Ludi just said. It's
Sure.
also it's just to, I think the point of the language isn't to say choose a man over a woman or a woman over a man. It's just to make sure that someone is mindful when they're picking these people that to serve on these commissions that represent the city. It's just to make sure that someone's mindful about who they're choosing and what's going into this choice. And I think that that's what the language is, what the intent of that is. It's just to make sure that we're being aware.
I have a point. Tom.
Well, Ron, Phil, listen. This is.
No, I don't want to discuss. I want to make an amendment.
Okay.
I want to propose the amendment to include African Americans into the proposed amendment.
I'd like to also make an amendment as well.
You can't do that. We have to discuss the motion at hand.
Okay.
Yeah, we got to do the motion as it is. Last word on this, Ron.
Yes, I'm quite proud of the city of Waterville. I'm 75 years old, which you asked a few months ago my age, so I know it's out, Tom. And that is that I think charter is a very good charter. There are some modifications we have to make. I don't think this is one of them. And this might be kind of off topic, but I'm looking at my screen now at the 10 different names. And, somebody brought this up the first meeting that I went to. This Charter Commission has great amount of diversity. Just look at the screen now and see who is here. And this is who voted us in from the city of Waterville. So as any type of discrimination, I really don't see it here, and I really don't think that changing this is something we should do at this time. I believe in brevity, so that's all I'll say.
Okay. All right. In light of that, we are now going to vote on the motion as made by James and seconded by Julian. Phil, how do you vote on the motion?
No.
Ludi,
Yes.
Samantha,
Yes.
Rian,
Yes.
Hillary,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Ron,
No.
me, no. Julian,
Resounding no.
Kathy.
No.
All right. The motion is 5-5. It does not pass.
Tom?
Any other motions that we would like to make as it pertains to the mayor before we move on to city manager?
I have one, but it's going to be a lengthy debate. We are at 7:45. Do we want to call it for tonight and come back in 2 weeks, or do you want me to make my motion? I don't want to start a conversation and then get in the middle of it, because I have a feeling in 2 weeks we're just going to go back and just re-have the same conversation.
Rian, I think you are right, and I respect your wisdom and your headiness to just such a high degree right here. So yes, I agree with you. I think if we're gonna be taking involved steps here, that it's probably prudent to just move this meeting to its adjournment and then start up again, especially because, correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to have your motion. We're also going to be, I think, having a little bit further discussion as far as the mayor's position is concerned regarding emergency powers. And I think those two are pretty important, and they're probably both going to be pretty lengthy.
Tom?
Yes.
Before we adjourn, can I, under other, bring something up?
So yes, but I see Phil's hand up. I want to make sure that we get to him, and then you, as long as it's
Okay.
brief.
So it's brief before the hammer comes down. Thank you.
All right, Phil, what's up?
I have a motion.
Yes.
I would like to make a motion, if it's okay, to modify section 5, paragraph G, to include that such board and commission should reflect a diverse, let me see what's the word that I'm trying. A diverse, all such board and commission should include the let me see, I'm trying to find the right word here to make it more inclusive to everybody.
Phil, may I suggest, because again, I think that's probably going to, we can certainly try and streamline this conversation for the next time. I think that is probably going to be part and parcel of a pretty lengthy conversation come next meeting. Would you mind, because you're not going to be precluded from raising that at the next meeting, would you mind holstering that and bringing that up at our next meeting?
Sure, I will. I'll work on the appropriate language there to bring it back.
Okay.
Well, and Phil, it may also be easier if you specify what the boards and commissions cannot be made up of.
Cannot be made.
Yeah, instead of trying to just think on that as well. I'll email you, Phil.
I think I understand what you're saying. I think I do, but I don't want to speculate. If you wanna to chat about that offline, I can.
Yeah.
Julian, then Kathy, then I'm going to make a motion to adjourn. Quickly, let's go.
Okay, so in light of the pandemic, situations have changed and circumstances. We're in a unique situation where we're all housebound, and when we're not housebound, we're going to be very busy catching up, running to Home Depot. So this is really for the chairs and secretaries to think about. But I'm wondering, on these nights we're stuck in and we can work from home, we could knock out a lot of meetings and speed it up so that we really get this charter finished. It's just food for thought.
I will say this.
Hang on, because I didn't expect to be stuck in here. And as we can see, when you're homebound, we could organize a second meeting of 10 people very quickly. So I think it's a really good opportunity for us to make some good steam. I'll leave that with the chairs and the powers that be, but I just know that when we finally get the curfew lifted, we're not going to want to go to meetings. We want to start getting back with our lives. So it's a thought for the chairs. Thank you.
I will say this: I have no issue having weekly meetings until you know we're kind of operating at full capacity here as a city. So if everybody can get it together, we can do it next week as well, and the following week, and so on and so forth. I have no problem doing that at all. Kathy.
No, I just wanted to verify, Tom, with you that we will be starting still with section 5 for the next meeting.
That is my understanding. Of course, that is at this point though, that'll really be James's purview. I mean, again, we're going to start with the minutes of this meeting and any the approval of any amendments that we made today, and then we need to, and then we'll go from there. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Wait just a minute. Hold it.
Wait, run, Tom, you don't have to run. You're already at home.
Well, the reason I'm raising my hand is I never figured out on the right-hand side how to do the hands up. So that's why.
Oh, all right.
Well, final point I wanted to make. I want to say something about our city clerk, Patty Dubois. I think we should commend her for her dedication, competence, and experience, how she's gone above and beyond, working 24/7 in these last few days. We really should give as much high praise to her. She is a valued employee, which we cannot say enough about her.
Ron, that is well said, and I certainly second that. Obviously, more in a figurative sense than in a literal sense, but yes, I do.
We appreciate you, Patty.
Yes, for sure. Thank you, Patty.
Yeah, we love you, Patty.
Love you, Patty.
Thank you,
You're the
Patty.
best.
All right, so there's been a second. Let's go right down the list as we have all night tonight. Phil, how do you vote on the motion to adjourn?
I disagree and agree. I agree. Yes.
Okay, Ludi, how do you vote?
Yes.
Samantha,
Yes.
Rian,
Let's go home.
Hillary,
Yes.
James,
Yeah.
Ron,
Yes.
me, yes, Julian.
No.
Okay, Kathy.
Yes.
So everybody, listen. Have a great night. Great
Have a
job
good night,
tonight,
everyone.
guys. And I would like to tell everybody. I know that these are not fun times. Nobody's enjoying this experience, but I think everybody came here tonight. Everybody came here and was serious and worked hard. I do think we covered a lot of ground, and I just want to tell everyone I thought they did a wonderful job tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
No.
Thanks, everyone.
Night, everyone.